The next is make we do agreements. What that simply means is that let's create a formal contract. The next is the land no get case. What that simply means is that there is no ongoing legal dispute about the property. The next is the area they developed. What that means is that the neighborhood is growing with new construction. The next is government plan they come. So whenever you hear the word government plan they come, what that means is that there are upcoming government developmental projects in the area. And the last but not the least is that the land sweet well. Whenever you hear the word the land sweet well, what that means is that the property is very desirable and valuable. Thank you for watching. Now I want to continue on the terminologies of real estate, but this time around we want to focus on the pidgin terms or street language in Nigeria. These are things you will hear when you begin to engage in real estate in Nigeria. The first pidgin terminology or street language in real estate is called omonile. Who are omonile? They simply or literally mean children of landowners, people who claim family rights to land and demand payment for development or purchase. The next is called family land. Family land. Whenever you hear the word family land, it means land owned collectively by a family rather than one person. The next is called the past don't complete. What that simply means is all documents are in order, but verify this yourself. The next is something they call CFO, the process. When you hear words like the CFO, the process, what that simply means is the certificate of occupancy is being prepared and can take months or even years. The next is something called I get connection. Whenever you hear the word I get connection, it simply means that someone claims to have contacts who can speed up document processing. But this time around, you have to be careful with those kind of people when it comes to striking real estate deals or doing search for properties or even perfecting your title. The next is the land don't clear. What that simply means is that the seller claims there's no legal issues with the property. The next is we dey for same page. When you hear words like make we dey for the same page, it simply means let's make sure we understand each other and agree. Next is show me where the beacon dey. It simply means that a buyer is requesting for you to point out the boundary markers to him or her. That's what that word means. The next is the price no include agreements. When you hear words like the price no include agreement, what that simply means is that the selling price doesn't include the legal documentation costs. The next word is I go settle the family. When you hear words like I go settle the family, it simply means that I will handle payments to the land owning family. That is what that word means. The next is the land no get problem. When you hear words like the land no get problem, it simply means that the seller claims there is no legal issues. The next is na original C of O. When you hear words like na original C of O, what that simply means is that they claim the certificate of occupancy is genuine. You need to verify the land registry whenever you hear such words to be double sure that what is being said to you and what is given to you is correct. The next is the survey correct. It simply means that the survey plan is accurate. Always learn to verify that particular survey also. The next word is I go do the running around. Whenever you hear the word I go do the running around, it simply means that I will handle the paperwork and government processes. That is what that word means. I go do the running around. The next is the land don't see case. So whenever you hear the word like the land don't see case, so it simply means that the property has been involved in a lot of litigation. That's exactly what that means. The next is the matter don't settle. Whenever you hear the word the matter don't settle, what that means is that the legal dispute has been resolved. Always get proofs and verify. The next is na community land. Whenever you hear the word na community land, it simply means that the land belongs to the entire community, not an individual. The next is you go pay for foundation. It simply means omonile will demand payment when you start building. The next is the area boys don't come. What that means is that the local touts have arrived to demand money. The next is make we reason am. It simply means let's negotiate and come to an agreement. The next is the price now for cash. It simply means the price is for immediate full payment. The next is I know the rush. What that simply means is that I'm not in a hurry to sell. It's actually a negotiation tactics. The next is the land sweet die. It simply means that the land is in a good location and also valuable. Okay, the next is na dry land. So whenever you hear the word na dry land, what it simply means is that the land doesn't flood during rainy season. The next is the land they flood. Whenever you hear the word the land they flood, it simply means that the area floods during heavy rain. The next is government no they disturb here. What that simply means is that the area has minimal government regulation or enforcement. The next is the C of O day for ministry. Simply means that the certificate of occupancy is at the land ministry and is being processed. The next is NEPA light day. What that simply means is that there is electricity supply in the area. The next is the area no the flood. It simply means that the location doesn't experience flooding at all. The next is the land no dey bush. It simply means that the land is cleared and accessible. The next is you go pay for fencing. Whenever you hear the word you go pay for fencing, it simply means is that Omonine will demand payment when you are fencing the property. The next is I don't show you everything. So whenever you hear the word I don't show you everything, what that simply means is that the seller claims to have disclosed all relevant information. The next is the matter don't finish. What that simply means is that any previous disputes have been resolved. The next is you go see the ballet. Whenever you hear the word you go see the ballet, what that simply means is that you will need to meet with the community traditional leader. The next is you go pay for survey. Simply means that you will need to pay for the new survey plan. The next is the family no they agree. It simply means that the family members are disputing ownership of the land. The next is I be the head of the family. What that simply means is that someone claims to be the family leader authorized to sell the land. Always verify with other family members. Next is you fit build story building. Whenever you hear the word you fit build story building, it simply means that the land can support multi-story building. The next is the ground don't level. What that means is that the land has already been graded and prepared for construction. The next is water day for underground. And what that simply means is that there is accessible groundwater for drilling a borehole.